What's up guys, my name is Liam and today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Delux M800 Pro Highspeed. This has the capability of up to an 8,000 Hz polling rate when using it wired, and wirelessly it's capable of offering up to 2,000 Hz. So is this going to be the perfect gaming mouse for you? Let's check it out. Alright guys, and before we get started today, I did want to let you know that metkeys.com did actually send this mouse out to me, so Metkeys, thank you very much for that. However, that being said, everything you're going to be hearing in this video today is going to be my own words and my own opinions. So when you do purchase this, it does actually come with a set of glass skates included as well. Coming over to the box, here's what it looks like from the front. On the side, they do show the colorways that it comes in. You got the orange, yellow, blue, and I did actually opt for this chloral pink colorway. Then they've also included some additional information here on the back, 3395 sensor, up to 80 hours of battery life, and this is kind of demonstrating the different polling rate options that they have available. And inside the box, here we have the mouse right here on the right side. That's what it looks like on the top. That's what it looks like on the bottom there. They also do include an additional set of the PTFE skates. And then down here in the bottom is just the instruction manual. You do get a USB-C cable included. And then it also comes with a dongle and this dongle adapter. And coming over to the mouse, starting at the bottom, you do have this button right here. And this button will allow you to switch between the 2.4 gigahertz dongle, and it also offers two different types of Bluetooth modes. Then you just simply have your power button right down here in the bottom right corner. And as you can see, they offer you a little spot to store the dongle. And when it comes to skates, these are just kind of your typical harsher style skates. I was actually looking at the dimensions on this right here, and it does look like the dot skates, these are a little too narrow up here to be able to fit the dot skates on here, but I actually own the original, the very first version of this mouse that came out, and the skate design looks similar as all the previous models. So if you wanted to pick up a set of Tiger Eye skates or something like that, they do have those available for these out there for you as well. Coming back over the top, this does have a matte UV coating, and it kind of just has a overall plasticky type of a feeling. It hasn't really been too slippery for me. It is a little bit grippy, and they actually do have these little plastic grooves on the side. I would probably prefer the mouse without them. However, I do want to say that they're not that bad, and they do actually give you a little bit of extra grip. I feel like I was testing it out by gripping the side and then trying to grip the buttons, and the buttons do feel a little bit more slippery. And the good news is once I started using this mouse and I got used to it, I didn't even notice that they were there. They didn't add any additional type of discomfort for me or anything like that. And when it comes to the clicks, this is using Huano micro switches, and it does have pink dots in it. The pre-travel, there's just a very minimal amount of pre-travel. The clicks feel honestly pretty good. They feel really light and snappy, and there isn't a whole lot of post-travel when you're actuating from the middle of the switch here. So the click implementation does feel really good. When you do start getting more towards the front of the button, you can start to make more contact with the shell, and if you were to come more over here, it does kind of wobble and rock a little bit on the buttons. I did feel like Mouse 2 has just a slight bit more of pre-travel, which seems kind of typical, but aside from that, still nice, real good click, lightweight, good feedback. Even going from the front of the mouse to the back, it's pretty consistent. It does get a little harsher towards the back, but not bad at all, and feels really good overall. There's really only one issue that I came across when using mouse button 1 and 2. The left to right play isn't that bad, but the one thing that I did kind of notice is, for whatever reason, I do feel like these have quite a bit of rocking in them. And it did kind of make them feel a little bit loose when I was tracking, going back and forth with the rocking, but nothing too bad, just something I figured I'd bring up. And then the one last thing here is on the shell here, I feel like these buttons are really close together. And there were times that I did notice that if I was in a really tense battle and I was just pressing down really hard while I was tracking, I do get some kind of rubbing right here. If I just so happen to be, you know, going to the left and kind of pushing the button in towards the left, they do kind of rub there on the end, as you can see. But again, just a real minor detail that I noticed, didn't really impact my gameplay or anything like that, and it really didn't happen that often. The scroll wheel uses a BM 8.0 encoder, and it feels pretty good. The steps are pretty light on it, but they are pretty defined. You can absolutely feel them. and the click on this is really lightweight and it's very easy to spam. The scroll also feels pretty solid left to right, not a whole lot of play or wiggle, and it feels really consistent. You do have the DPI button here at the top of the mouse, and it's incredibly low profile, which I feel like is a good thing because there's never a time where I accidentally hit it or bumped it during my gameplay. Coming over to the side buttons, they do feel pretty good. There's just a little bit of pre-travel there, but then you have a nice defined click. There's a little bit of post-travel as well. You can kind of push it in the mouse a little bit, but nothing too bad. Just a little bit of play left to right, but very minimal. And same thing with the front, a little bit of pre-travel, a little bit of post-travel, but overall the side buttons, they feel pretty good. And as far as the overall build quality goes, nice and solid. I'm not getting any type of creaking, bending, or flexing. Even if I push in the center of the mouse as hard as I can near the side buttons, it feels really solid. So let's go ahead and drop the click and quality sound test. And when it comes to the weight and balance, this is a 500 milliamp hour battery inside, and on my scale it's coming in at approximately 70.8 grams. Balance, it feels nice and centered. It feels really good. And then coming over to the left and right balance, it feels pretty solid there as well. I'm going to leave a link down in the description below to download the software, and the software seemed to be pretty intuitive. It was pretty simple to use. When you do have this plugged in, it doesn't give you the option of a 4K polling rate. It only allows you to choose between the 2K and then jump up to the 8K. One thing I did notice is when this does go into wireless mode, it still allows you to select the 8000 hertz polling rate when I was using it. However, I did go back and forth testing this out time and time again, and when you have it wired, if you obviously have the 8000 hertz polling rate selected, it does give you a pretty consistent 8000 hertz polling rate. But then the second that you disconnect it, even if the software is showing the 8000 hertz polling rate, it does drop it down to the 2000 hertz polling rate when in wireless. And when it comes to the performance, it really felt great. Using it at both the 8000 hertz polling rate and even wirelessly at the 2000 hertz polling rate, it played really solid for me. I didn't come across any issues or notice any discrepancies when I was using it on my system. And when it comes to this shape, like I told you guys, I actually bought the very first version of this mouse that came out. I believe it had like a 33-35 sensor when it first became available on Amazon.com. And I gotta say that I just absolutely love the shape of this mouse. It is more kind of a medium style shaped mouse, and it kind of has a pretty good balance between the Razer Viper Mini and the Razer Viper V2 Pro. I feel like the height of the mouse is nice and comfortable. It isn't too overwhelming. It doesn't feel too flat. Even the side profile, the curves, it feels really great. And starting out when comparing the M800 to the Razer Viper Mini, coming over to the bottom of the mice, as you can see the curve profile, everything looks incredibly similar to one another. I do feel like the M800 is just a little bit wider of a mouse from the bottom, and it also feels just slightly a bit longer as well. And coming over to the rear, you can see the curve profile from the top middle of the mouse down to the sides isn't that far from one another. Everything else about the M800 just feels like a slightly little bit of a larger mouse than the Razer Viper Mini. All right, and when next up comparing the Delux M800 to the Razer Viper V2 Pro. Really similar thing on the bottom here, but just on the opposite end of the spectrum. They have a really similar curve profile, if not almost identical, but as you can see here, where the Razer Viper Mini is just a little bit more narrow, the Razer Viper V2 Pro is just a little bit wider overall. It also does feel a little bit longer in the hands, but if you come over here to the rear profile, as you can see, the hump on the Razer Viper V2 Pro, it actually does taper off a little bit less aggressively from the top middle mouse over the sides. Again, just making it feel not only wider on the bottom, but wider on the top as well. And even though the Viper V2 Pro is wider and it does feel longer, kind of the opposite effect happens. I feel like the mid hump is higher on the Delux M800, but then it gets even lower and has more of a flatter feeling at the top of the Viper V2 Pro. All right, next up, when comparing the M800 to the Starlight-12 Medium, both of these mice are very similar when it comes to the overall size, but some of the differences are on the Starlight-12 Medium, it has less aggressive curves on the side, so at the very middle center of the mouse towards the bottom, it does feel a little bit wider than on the M800. And then coming over here to the rear, the Starlight-12 Medium does have a slower taper from the top middle of the mouse over here to the sides, whereas on the M800 it does drop off more aggressively to the sides, so it does make the Starlight-12 not only feel a bit wider at the bottom of the mouse, but at the top of the mouse as well. And then finally, when you're looking at both of them from the side, you can see how they clearly look really similar in size. The one difference on the side profiles, I do feel like the top mid hump is a bit lower and flatter on the Starlight-12, and it sticks up just a little bit taller on the M800. All right, then next up, when comparing the M800 Pro to the Darmoshark M3s Varun. Both of these mice are incredibly similar when it comes to the overall size. As you can see here on the Varun, the curvature profile on the sides, it does feel a little bit flatter, and it just makes it feel just slightly a little bit wider at the very bottom, but they're very close to one another. Coming over to the top, the curve profile from the top middle of the mouse down the sides, it isn't that far apart from each other. I do feel like the Darmoshark Varun does feel just a little bit wider, but they do feel pretty similar to one another. And then finally, looking at these from the side, even though these are very similar when it comes to the overall size of both of these mice, the biggest difference between the two obviously is that the M800 is a mid-hump style mouse, whereas the M3s Varun has more of a rear hump. All right, and then finally, when comparing the Delux M800 Pro to the VGN Dragonfly F1. Both of these mice are, again, they're very similar to each other when it comes to the overall size, and the curve profile is actually really similar as well. As you can see here, the VGN Dragonfly, the base of the mouse does feel just a little bit longer, and even in the hands, I do feel like that the VGN Dragonfly just overall feels a little bit longer due to the top curve profile. It's very flat here at the top of the mouse, and you do get more of a curve going on over here on the Delux M800. When you look at these two from the rear, they are pretty similar with the top curve profile going down the sides. I do believe that the VGN is just a little bit more narrow, but overall they feel very similar to one another. And then finally, looking at these two mice from the side, like I said, the top of the VGN Dragonfly just feels a bit flatter, where you do get a little bit more of a hump on the Delux M800 Pro. Alright guys, so that wraps things up for the Delux M800 Pro Highspeed. I must say that I've been a huge fan of this mouse ever since, like I said, I got the very first version. I feel like the shape's on point. I feel like it has really solid build quality, and I feel like it games really well. Alright guys, so if you have any questions or feel like I left anything out, please let me know down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed watching this video and are interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please drop this video a like and subscribe to my channel. I've left affiliate links down in the description below if you're interested in picking up any of these mice, getting a discount, and supporting the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.